think we have a big problem with our federal government? If you do, stay tuned because we at Convention of States have a solution as big as the problem. Our broadcast host is Dale Parrish. He's the Convention of States Indiana State Director. Take it away, Dale.
Well, thank you, Maringo Mike. According to my screen, you didn't see Maringo Mike moving, but maybe you did, and it's just my screen. I don't know. Hopefully you heard him, but I don't know what went wrong with the clip there. If in fact it did go wrong, I maybe it's just what I was looking at. But anyway, yes, according to Maringo Mike, my name's Dale Parrish. I am the State Director for Convention of States here in the state of Indiana, and I want to welcome you to our broadcast this evening. We've got another great broadcast lined up for you, and our broadcast is broken down into segments, and I want to just quickly go over those segments with you so that you'll know what to expect this evening. Now, the first segment that we get into is what we call the topic discussion. We try every broadcast, every Monday evening, we try to have a different topic of discussion. It could be literally a topic, or it could be a guest. But tonight we have our super volunteer here in Convention of States for Indiana, Debbie Stewart, is going to be on and be presenting another chapter in the Constitutional Literacy series. Debbie has been doing a fantastic job presenting these different chapters, and we have her tonight with a chapter on establishment of religion. So I think this is going to be very, very, very interesting. Now, after Debbie's finished, then I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint presentation that I use and give you some general information on how we're doing here in the state of Indiana, some general information as to the resources that we have available to us here in the state. Now, after that segment's completed, and time permitting, I want to get into what we refer to as the Convention of States Basics. These are the three tenets that our program nationally as well as here in Indiana, the tenets that our program is based upon. So I think this is something that we try to do every broadcast to remind people constantly of what we're all about and what we're trying to do. Now, once we get through the basics, then I'm going to do my best to recognize the viewers that we have on board tonight. And if you, as a viewer, if you have a comment or a question, feel free to enter that in the chat section, and keep the comment or question brief, because I'm limited as to the number of characters that I can put up here. But I'll put your picture and the comment or question up here as best I can. We always want to recognize those of you that have tuned in with us for the broadcast. Following that, then we'll get into the closing, kind of wrap things up, let you know what's going to happen on our next broadcast, and we'll wrap things up for the evening. So without further ado, let me arrange to bring Debbie up here, and we'll get her going on her chapter this evening. So Debbie there she is right now. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Dale.
Good. Debbie, did you happen to see in the beginning of the broadcast, was Maringo Mike moving?
Oh, I am so sorry I didn't catch that. I was just kind of everything organized.
All right. I don't know what. Well, hopefully, maybe it went all right. Maybe it's just my screen. We'll see. So, Debbie, you're going to be talking about establishment of religion. So, take it away.
Okay, great. So we're going to talk about the very first amendment to our Constitution, the very first clause of the First Amendment, which is called the Establishment Clause, gives us the title, the Establishment of Religion here in our country. And so, but before I go into that, I want to talk a little bit about what are our objectives. And there's three main objectives in this presentation. is I want to present to you, and this is out of Michael Ferris's book. He identifies what is the original intent of the Establishment Clause. We'll talk about that. And then we're going to talk about ways in which the Establishment Clause has been used to limit our religious freedom rather than protect it. You've heard people say separation of church and state, and they think, oh, the church has to stay out of government. No, actually, it was put there so the government would stay out of the church. Okay? And then the third major objective is that there's something called the Lemon Test that was developed by the Supreme Court. And unfortunately, they are taking this three-pronged Lemon Test as a test and substituting that for the Founding Fathers' original intent on the Establishment Clause. Okay. So they're making rulings that aren't based on original intent or history. They're making rulings based on this three-point Lemon Test that is somewhat subjective. Okay, so so now before we get into the meat of the material, I just want a couple terms I want to go over here that we'll be talking about tonight. The first one is the Establishment Clause, and again, it's found in the First Amendment, very first clause, and it prohibits Congress from creating an official state church, and it reads just like this: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, which means that Congress can't come in and make an official state church. They can't declare the Protestant church or the Catholic church or anything here in America. They're not to have any say in that. We have freedom of religion. We can pick where we worship, how we worship, what religion we are. And then there's another word called sanction, because you'll hear this word. Sanction means that it's given official approval. A state-sanctioned church is a church that has been officially approved by the government. And that's a no-no here in America. Okay? And then the last one is, I'll cover this a little bit later, but the Lemon Test is a three-part test devised by the Supreme Court to decide whether or not an action by any level of government violates the Establishment Clause. All right? Okay. And precedent also is when a case is decided earlier and that case wins, then when there's a case later on down the road in time, they'll go back and take a look at how that case was decided as part of their argument. That's called precedent. So I guess we can get right into defining what an established church is. So if we go back to England, you know, our founding fathers came from England, where they knew that they took the king, the one who ran the country, also was the head of the church. So you can just imagine if our president who runs the country was also the head of the church. That would not be good. That puts power and control into one hand over everything. And so our founding fathers knew what it felt like to be limited in what they wanted to believe. In the 1600s, well, I was going to say, yeah, in the 1600s, even here in America, in colonial Massachusetts, the Puritans actually persecuted the Baptists and the Quakers because they didn't believe what they wanted them to believe. And even going back into England, Mary the First, like they call Bloody Mary, she persecuted anybody who was not a Catholic. And then her father, Henry VIII, he persecuted the Catholics because he formed the Church of England. So they all had their way of, this is my church and everybody has to be part of my church. Mm-hmm. So what is an established church? Well, back then, an established church had certain characteristics, and as defined typically by the Church of England. So it was declared by law to be the official church of the state. You were required to believe the official church doctrines. You had to take an oath of support in that. Your attendance was mandatory. You could be punished if you didn't show up. Heresy, so if you disagreed with some of the doctrine, okay, it was a criminal offense. All publications required the church approval. Everyone had to pay taxes to the church. If you weren't an official church, you could be tolerated, but you no longer could be considered the church. You were a chapel or a place of worship or something like that. And your marriage wasn't recognized by anyone and by the state if it wasn't done in the official established church. So they had a lot of rules on an established church. So when our founding fathers came over, they were like, okay, we don't want that, or that. So they put it in the very first amendment, the very first clause of the First Amendment. So, which we're so thankful for that. Okay, so let's move into the Supreme Court and the Establishment Clause. So as we've been talking all this time we've been going through this book, is the Supreme Court tends to take original intent and the meaning of the Founding Fathers, and they tend to enhance it, change it from day to day. There doesn't seem to be a lot of consistency. And so there was a case called Marsh versus Chambers in 1983. And a man came forward in Nebraska. His name was Ernie Chambers. And he said he was challenging the Establishment Clause because they were praying in Congress. And so the U.S. Congress had always hired a chaplain to pray at the start of the legislative day. So the Supreme Court ruled against Ernie Chambers because he said, history shows that this is okay. We've always done this. An established church has nothing to do with praying in Congress, okay? They are not setting up an official state church. They're merely saying, we're going to open in prayer. They're two different things. So history says that original intent, it was okay to pray in Congress, and we still do that. We still have I think his name is Chaplain Black in U.S. Congress now, and
Right.
he's there. So the Supreme Court ruled correctly in that situation. But there were two other cases where they didn't rule well. Lennon versus Kurtzman actually was 12 years earlier in 1971. But in this case, instead of using original intent, and I won't go into all the details of the case, but they used something they made up called the lemon test. Okay, and it's kind of ironic because I always think a car that doesn't run, we call it a lemon. It doesn't really have a good connotation to it. But anyways, they come up with this test. And the test basically said that, according to the so-called lemon test, an action by any level of government violates the Established Clause if one of the following three things is true. A, the government statute has a religious purpose. Or B, the government statute has a principal or primary effect that either advances religion or prohibits it. Or three, the government statute would require the government to become excessively entangled in religion. So if any of those three things are there, then it violates the Establishment Clause. Okay? So this was the lemon test, which could be kind of subjective. And then, let's see, 2 years later after the Chambers case, there was another case called Wallace versus Jaffe. And again, in this case, they used the lemon test. So the Supreme Court kind of abandoned what was original intent. The original intent was, yes, we can pray in places. And this happened to be prayer, a time of silence before school every day. But because they used the lemon test, and the man who was trying to give this time of silence where you could pray, but you didn't have to, you could do whatever you wanted, because he had an original religious intent, they threw it out and said it was unconstitutional. I remember when I was in grade school, we prayed before every class. We said the pledge and we prayed.
Right.
Very interesting how just because of this lemon test, it changed the whole standard, and that threw out a lot of cases that probably would have been constitutional.
Yeah.
So the Supreme Court has been inconsistent, and they veered from original intent again.
Okay.
So, all right. And so this leads us into myths of the Establishment Clause, because so many people here in America really don't understand what the Establishment Clause or how it can be applied here in America. So I just want to go through a couple myths right here to make sure that people understand that. Before I do, Dale, do you have any comments or questions?
You're doing great here.
I can really fast, so sorry.
I just can't help but think of, all the governments around the world right now where, in fact, religion is part of the government. Mm-hmm. And how different we are in this country, where, just like you said earlier, according to our Constitution, the government is out of religion, out of our individual religion. And so just thinking how different we are in this country compared to a lot of other countries around this world.
Absolutely. And, I think many of us take that for granted because we don't know anything different, but people from other countries, I'm so thankful that we can get up on a Sunday morning and we can go to a church that we want and worship the way we want and wherever it's located and whatever doctrine we choose to believe. And that's such a blessing that a lot of countries don't have.
Right. Right.
So I'm very passionate about this because I feel like, religion is a big part of many people's lives, and they ought to be able to do that freely.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so a couple myths here. Can religious groups use government facilities? Well, a lot of people say no because that's violating the clause. No, absolutely. As long as that government facility is open to all similar groups, then the religious organizations can use that facility also. So it should be a level playing field. Second question, is it a violation of the Establishment Clause to allow religious schools to participate in educational choice programs like vouchers or tax credits? No, it is not a violation. They're, again, on level ground with that. Is it a violation of the Establishment Clause to enact laws that flow out of some people's religious beliefs? Well, no, because if you think about every decision we make has some morality. No abortion, that's morality, right? What about racial discrimination? We got rid of racial discrimination in our country over the years. That's morality, isn't it? So all morality, all laws legislate somebody's morality because we want to do the right thing.
Right.
That's the thing. Freedom and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So that's a fallacy right there. And then another one is, does it violate the separation of church and state? I love this one. For religious people to get involved in politics and public life? Absolutely not. We are to be encouraged to get involved in public life. Nobody's any different because they go to church. So everyone has the right to participate in public life and to be part of any kind of political system, whether it's just voting or helping out with election day or running for Senate or office somewhere. There's no difference. We're all on equal ground, whether you go to church and believe or you don't.
Excellent. Yes.
And so that's a big false view of the Establishment Clause. I've even had people, and we talked about this in one of my Constitution classes, and some of them still thought, oh, you mean we can get involved in politics? I'm like, yeah, the whole reason why politics has gone south is because we got out of politics. People who definitely, most religious people have some morality or a lot, they focus on morality, and we need that in our government. So, in conclusion, okay. The original meaning of the Establishment Clause was to ensure that all believers will always be free to worship according to their own values and consciences without fear of compulsion or coercion or being told what to do. And what has happened as we've lost sight of original intent of this clause, you can't set up a state religion. Okay, that's what that means. And the next time we get together, which will be either end of April or May, we're going to be talking about the free exercise of religion, which is the second clause of the First Amendment. So they can't set up a state church, but then they also can't interfere with you exercising your religion. There's two pieces to that whole religion piece. So, so the Supreme Court has gotten off track on that, and now we're living in that place off track because that's been kind of the standard lately.
Yep. Well, okay, Debbie, thank you very much.
You bet.
Another great chapter. And once again, what will you be talking about the next time we have you on?
It'll be the free exercise of religion. So it'll be the second part of freedom of religion.
Okay, great. Got a frog in my throat there. All right, thanks, Debbie. Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, folks, now I want to get into the next part or the next segment. And in order to do this, I'm going to have to bring up my PowerPoint presentation. And let me get that up here and hopefully press all the right buttons. And I want to get this so that you can see it clearly on your screen. And that will require me going to the slideshow presentation option here. So that should be the full screen. You should be able to see that fine. Well, as far as resources that we have available to us here in Indiana, as well as nationally, but our national website, conventionofstates.com, Very, very important website, has a wealth of information. If you're going to take that first step to get involved in Convention of States, which we hope you do, the first step is to go to this website and open an account, sign the petition. That makes you a supporter. And supporters are very, very important, as you will see here as we go on. But that's the very first thing you should do. But that is the main resource that we have available to us, conventionofstates.com. Now, embedded in that national website is our state web page, which is Convention of States /Indiana. Obviously, a more focused look on the state of Indiana. Social media platforms, we are on numerous platforms. The main one being Facebook. Convention of States Indiana is our state Facebook page. Matter of fact, the broadcast is coming to you this evening through that Facebook page, Convention of States Indiana. YouTube channel, COS Indiana, very much an educational resource for us. We have narrated PowerPoint presentations on there. We have recordings of these broadcasts. Tonight's broadcast, the recording will be on there tomorrow. Then also on the YouTube channel, we have links to a podcast that our legislative liaison, Paul Phillips, does, and it's called the Free to Be Free podcast. So these are excellent podcasts, ladies and gentlemen, and I encourage you to check these out. The Free to Be Free. Those are links to those podcasts on our YouTube channel. Twitter, #COS Indiana, Instagram, Convention of States Indiana. We're on LinkedIn. We're on a number of other platforms. So if you're into social media, you should be able to find us without any problem. All right. Let me give you some numbers here on how we're doing in the state of Indiana. In 2019, we finished the year just over 41,000 supporters. We've been growing tremendously here in Indiana. Our goal for this year, 2020, is to hit 52,000 supporters. And we're well on way. We're off to a great start this year, and looks like we're on our way to accomplishing that goal. About 2,900 volunteers, people that have indicated that they would be willing to help out if needed. And we have about 40 individuals in leadership roles. Now, this is very important. As I said, if you want to get involved in Convention of States, the first thing to do is go to that national website, conventionofstates.com, and open an account. Now, if you have a desire to get a little bit more involved, then I would encourage you then to click on the menu selection, Take Action, scroll down to where it says Become a Leader, and look at the different positions that we have, volunteer positions that we have in the state, and see if there would be one of interest to you. Now, these obviously are going to require some more time, and there are positions that require less time than other positions. So take a look at the ones that you like, open it up, read about it, and if you're really interested, then go ahead and make application. You're not obligated in any way, so you don't have to worry about that. But go ahead and make application, and what happens then is your name then comes up on a report that I see and a few other people see every day, and one of us then will be in contact with you to see how and to talk further about your interest in that particular position. All right. Well, folks, our first segment went a little bit longer than planned this evening, so I'm not going to go through the Convention of States basics. This is a segment that we do every Monday evening, so hopefully you'll tune in on future Monday evenings and be able to hear this segment, but it's always a time permitting type thing. But the Convention of States basics, the problem that as we see it, the solution, and our plan to get to that solution. And I'll just mention that solution is in fact a Convention of States convention, according to Article 5 of the Constitution, a convention of states for the purpose of proposing amendments to the Constitution, amendments that would address certain abuses that we see happening in our federal government, which is all part of the problem. But again, like I said, we're not going to go into this in any detail tonight because of time constraints. But tune in on future broadcasts, or look at one of our recordings, and you can see this, or go to our national website, conventionofstates.com, and see information on the Convention of States basics. So let me pull that out, and I'll go ahead and take that off, and there I am again. Now, I want to recognize some viewers that we have tonight. Apparently, a few people had a problem logging on to our broadcast tonight. I don't know why that is right offhand, but there's Rick Lyon, and Rick is our events coordinator in our organization here in Indiana, and his wife Susan, who is also on tonight. They both, they're on now, but they both had problems logging on to our broadcast tonight. So, folks, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened this evening or why that is, but that's the kind of the way it is with technology, you know. When it works, it's great, but when it doesn't, it can really cause problems. Now I see we also have another individual from in our organization, George Ward. George is our grassroots coordinator here in the state of Indiana, and he says he's had trouble sometimes as well. So I'm sorry for that. Obviously it's not my nothing that I can control, but hopefully we won't be encountering problems like that in the future. But I want to thank all of you for tuning in this evening. I appreciate you you tuning in and entering your comments there. Appreciate that. Well, let's go ahead and close it up for the evening. Now, as Debbie said in her topic discussion, the first segment, she's going to be coming back for another chapter in the Constitutional Literacy series, which will be, right now, it's planned for her to be back probably late April, maybe early May. But what we have lined up for you for the next 3 Monday evenings, right now, I have lined up the regional directors here in our organization across the country. There's 5 of them that I'm trying to get lined up, and I've lined up 3. But I think it would be very interesting to interview each of these individuals. So I've got one coming the next 3 Monday evenings, and we'll be talking to that individual. Be good to, you know, to hear their story, how they got involved in Convention of States, what part of the country their region occupies, and what kind of issues they're faced with in their regions, and how that compares to how we are now. Now, we didn't get into this in the basics since we didn't address the basics this evening, but Indiana is a past state. It's what's considered a past state. We have passed the resolution requesting a Convention of States be held. Now, all the states, and there are 15 states that have made this request, we need to get to 34 in order for this convention to take place. We were number 6 of the 15 that have passed this resolution. The point I'm getting to is that the 15 states that are considered past states are in a region, a separate region in our organization. So these regional directors that we're going to be talking to are regional directors, are directors of regions involving states that have yet to pass the resolution. Now, that means, and I hope we'll be able to explain this to you in our interviews, their priorities are a little bit different. their focus is a bit different. They are trying different things than we try here. With their major objective, of course, is to get their particular state to pass the resolution. Now, we accomplished that in 2016 here in Indiana. So, again, I think it'll be interesting to see and hear their take on the issues and challenges that they're facing in their various regions. All right. Well, let's get into wrapping things up here. And I always like to wrap it up with my favorite quote, and it comes from our president, Mark Meckler. And the quote is basically, I'm paraphrasing, but the quote is that, our country is facing a fundamental question. And that question is not, what should we do? The question is, who will decide? Yes, the question facing us is a two-word question. Very simply, who decides? And we believe here in Convention of States and here in Indiana that we, the people, should have a bigger say-so in who decides. So I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to close this evening once again asking any of you that may be tuning in for the first time, if you have any interest in getting involved in Convention of States, now is the time to do it. Go to that national website, conventionofstates.com, and open an account and become a supporter. And if you have any time, extra time that you would like to devote to Convention of States and get more involved, then take a look at some of the volunteer positions that we have available. So that's a wrap for this evening, folks, and look forward to seeing you next Monday evening at 7 o'clock for Convention of States Live. Have a good night. Bye.